Thanks for having me. I will confess when Gene called me and asked me to give a talk, I was pretty intimidated because of all the great researchers and experts that came in here. I kind of wondered for a while uh, what I had to say about this kind of topic. So it took me a while to kind of think about what to do here, honestly. With the topic of contemporary status in native plants. I don't consider myself a great botanist. I'm actually a forester. But then I got to thinking, and it's really, I've been around for a long time. I think that's mostly my biggest point, and I've done a lot of different things in Illinois. So I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with the state, I'm now with the university. Um, I've worked on some of the highest quality stuff and did some really neat stuff with that. I've also worked on some of the really bad stuff out there. And then yeah, I guess I've been around and tried a bunch of different things. I've been involved with a bunch of different things. And so I think that's kind of where I'm coming from. So this is not going to be a stat heavy talk or even a very technical talk. It's going to be more me just pontificating on what I think of plants and natural areas in Illinois at the time. So I named it originally The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Right. There you go. Thanks. Because I am a fan of those old spaghetti westerns. But then I thought about that, and I'm actually changed my name because I don't want to change not my name, the name of the talk, because I don't want to end on the ugly, right? That's kind of a bummer at the end of the day. So I've changed it. This thing works. There we go. I've changed it to the ugly, the bad, and the good. Right. And so I'm going to go over what I think are some of the ugly things that we're dealing with right now. What are some of the bad things we're dealing with? And they're kind of the same as the ugly. And then ending with what's good in Illinois in terms of what's going on in terms of plants and everything. So again, not very stat heavy. It's going to be more just looking at pictures and telling some stories. I'll try to go quick because I know we're running a little later. But for the ugly, I'm going to talk about we're dealing with invasive species and how they impact our natural areas. We're dealing with herbicide drift, which is increasingly becoming a major issue in the state in terms of impacting our plants. Climate change, extreme weather, however you want to call that. I think those are the uglies. The bads, which are also kind of ugly, but I'm going to talk about some habitat loss issues, some fragmentation, ecosystem sustainability, and that's going to come from my forester side of things. So you're going to hear me talk about oaks, just a warning. And then I'll get into the good stuff, right? So I'll talk about the amazing plant diversity we have, these preservation, protection efforts that we see going on, the management of natural ecosystems that's happened in my career across Illinois over the last 20 years or so, and then the people. Sound good? All right. So let's get this ugly stuff out of the way. Invasive species, right? This is something that has been and continues to be one of the biggest challenges to our native plant ecosystems, our native plant communities, our natural ecosystems out there, right? We have a lot of problems with invasive species, and it's been interesting over the last couple decades, kind of seeing how that's changed and how our priorities have changed over time in terms of what are the problematic species. When I started here, chaff flower in Southern Illinois was not known, right? And now it's our number one problem, right? So some things like that. And so just a little highlight of some of the stuff that we talk about with invasive species. 62% of the wildlife species that are listed on in our wildlife action plan as being in greatest need of conservation are directly threatened by invasive species. They're on there for that reason. A recent DNR survey found invasive species at 100% of the state parks. So everyone had invasive species issues. And then I do like the Chicago Region Trees Initiative saying that 36% of the trees in Chicago are common buckthorn. I don't want to do the same thing in Southern Illinois because I think we would be embarrassed by how much honeysuckle we have. Right? And so there's a lot of issues. I really like this picture when I'm talking about invasive species. It may confuse you why I'm talking about invasive species with this picture. Does anybody know that plant? Yeah, green trillium, right? So green trillium, as you all know, First off, you're like the only group that got that right. When I use this slide a lot, and everybody's like, that's a trillium, and they don't know which one. You all didn't hesitate to name it. That's awesome. So I like this picture. I took it because green trillium's an awesome plant. And this was a spot that's in southern Illinois. When we first started looking at it many years ago, there was about 7 flowering individuals. So I took the picture. And then later on, I looked at the picture more closely about, well, what else is in there, you know? And so all the purple stuff is bittersweet. All the red stuff is honeysuckle. Both of these vines are mat forming vines that will absolutely choke an ecosystem out, grow over everything, right? And so in this case, this small population of one of the coolest plants you're going to see was imperiled because of these invasive species, right? So that just really highlights that invasives aren't just a bigger problem, they are, but they're also a small problem too, and very specific at times. The good news is that we didn't leave the invasives there, and now that the population is growing. But it's just a good highlight. So some of the big invasives, of course, that we deal with, Amur honeysuckle. I consider it for forested lands in most of Illinois our number 1 problem in terms of the level of impact it has, its shade tolerance, its ability to just completely choke out that light layer that makes it to the understory, and it just captures that light in the midstory. We just see a paucity of plants able to grow underneath of it. And so I think that's why I kind of label it as our biggest problem. But we have some up and coming contenders. So here in Southern Illinois, how many people know about Japanese chafflower? Yeah, a lot of you raised your hand. So chafflower was interesting. When I first moved here in 2007, I guess now, it was not known from Illinois. It was first found, I think, by John Schwegman in 2008 down along the Ohio River at Chestnut Hills Nature Preserve. And it was a tiny, just a small population. Boy, has that changed. Just in my career, in my time here in Illinois, I've seen it go from like it was an early detection species and we were trying to eradicate it to like, oh shoot, how do we deal with this when we go to places and it looks like this, right? So the change has just been phenomenal in a bad way with this species, and that we're absolutely losing right on this one. We are losing on this one for sure. See, this is the ugly. This is why I didn't want to end with this. And then the other one, stiltgrass. We all know stiltgrass. I kind of use this one because it has the nature preserve sign there. It's kind of embarrassing, but I do use it. But stiltgrass is another one of those that we see just marching through. It's a problem where people just don't know how to deal with it because of the scale that it's on. And it's not only in our natural areas, it's in our parks, it's in our campgrounds. Big issues, right? So I could just keep going on species after species. I'm not going to because I've got better stuff to talk about. I just wanted to highlight, I think that's one of the ugly problems that we face with our native plants and our natural systems right now. One last kind of invasive, but not moving out of the plant world is emerald ash borer. We've seen it in the last 10 years, right? So in 2015, it was first found in Southern Illinois. So it's been 11 years we've had this. And I know Northern Illinoisans, all of you all have seen it for a lot longer and experienced it, I think since 2006. So you've got another decade on us. But we went from having healthy ash trees to now I dare you to find a healthy ash tree in anywhere in Illinois. And so we have, this is what a lot of our stands look like. A lot of our second growth forests, our forests that are dominated by green ash or white ash, we're losing them too, right? So just a huge issue. All right, so that's all invasives. I'm not going to talk about any more about invasive species, but I will hit some more ugly things. Herbicide drift. And I think this is not talked about enough, honestly. We're talking about it more and more in the forestry world because we're seeing it on our trees, but it's on our native plants as well. This is an issue anywhere we have parcelization or small fragments of natural lands within an agricultural matrix. You're dealing with this thing, unfortunately. We're getting this drift moving in, and it's kind of a slow death. It's a stressor to the plants. It's not killing the plants outright on day one, but repeated exposures to herbicide is weakening these plants and causing them to be susceptible to other problems. And there's a lot of data on this. I keep walking around, sorry. And so you haven't looked at this, I do highly recommend reading TJ and David's report on to the DNR on looking at herbicides and all pesticides, herbicides and fungicides primarily, in natural lands, in natural ecosystems in Illinois. And it is absolutely alarming what they found, of how much they found it. But then you can also look at Prairie Rivers Network and some of their work, the report they have hidden in plain sight. It's another really good read as well. But basically, with these, just to kind of steal a slide from TJ, you see hot spots in central Illinois primarily, but still across the whole state of site level injury due to herbicide drift or pesticide drift in general. And so we see areas of the state when our trees look like this. This would be kind of the status quo. This is what most trees end up looking like because they have this chronic problem with herbicide exposure. So highlighting that as something I don't think gets talked about enough, particularly on our non-woody plants. I wanted to make it a point here. The next ugly thing would be climate change or extreme weather conditions. This is a picture from Millstone Lake from last year. And so this was early fall color happening due to the drought we had. It's a pretty bad drought we had last year in 2025. But we saw this all across southern Illinois where we saw our trees kind of shutting down early, right, and doing this. And so this is more frequent. The drought situation is, and so of course we all remember the 2012 drought. It was a major issue across the state, particularly in southern Illinois. And that one was bad enough. We not only saw early shutdown, we saw tree mortality. And so this was a site that had a ton of the state threatened chestnut oak, Quercus montana, mortality from that drought event. And so if we can expect stronger, more frequent extreme weather events like droughts, we can expect more stress on our native ecosystems for sure. This one was from last year as well, the big tornado in Marion, right? And so we can expect a lot of the predictions are showing more frequent, more severe weather events like tornadoes. I know I'm sick and tired of tornadoes because I live right there beside this one, and that's the third one in the last 2 years that's I've had to climb into my basement and hope I don't get hit. So I don't want to have any more tornadoes, but we can expect more moving through here. And not only tornadoes, but derechos, right? And so this was from a couple years ago, the big derecho in northern Illinois. Again, just stronger weather. And in fact, I really found this interesting. Some research out there. This is the Journal of Applied Meteorology and Climatology, of which I'm a devout reader, right? Not really, but it's still cool stuff. And they were finding over the last 20 years or so, and this is a really, really good article, and I highly recommend reading it. So they compared like from the 70s through the 90s and the change from that time period from the 2000s and how tornadoes and where they're found in the US, how it's changed. And so if you see on this graph, the red means it's been a drastic increase on the top one, it's an increase in the amount of tornadoes, and the bottom one is the increase in the length of the path of the tornadoes. And then the blue is less. And so what we're seeing on these is Tornado Alley, which we all think about being Kansas and Oklahoma and all this area. That's not Tornado Alley anymore. You can see over the last 20 years, drastic decrease in the number of tornadoes. And right here in southern Illinois is the new Tornado Alley, where everything is shifted over here. We see more tornadoes, a huge increase in the number of tornadoes and the severity of the tornadoes over the last 20 years. So just a part of climate change that we're experiencing that has an impact on our safety, but absolutely has an impact on our natural systems. And then we can expect some winners and losers with the general overall climate change, not just the extreme weather, but just the changing, everyday changing climate. This is a neat chart. I'm not going to go through it, obviously, but it's from the climate change projections from the Northern Forest Climate Hub about the individual tree species in Illinois and what's going to happen, they think, over the time. So the red would be losers, the blue would be winners, if you will, and an amount of change. And you can see that there's a lot of things going on, right? There's a lot of changes. Some species, some of our native species are going to do worse. Some may do better. Some we don't have a lot of certainty on what's going to happen with them. All we know is that our assemblages of native plants, our native plant communities are going to change um, drastically moving forward, right? Yeah. So that's all the ugly. We're done with those, right? Let's go into the bad, which is also kind of ugly. But this is some of the stuff I wanted to highlight was habitat loss and fragmentation. And I like this picture because you can see there's a little cemetery prairie right there in the middle in that little red dot. And then talk about fragmentation, look at everywhere around it, right? It's all ag fields. And so we do see this issue where our natural systems, our native plant systems are fragmented a lot. They're disconnected, and that has some big implications on genetic flow, on if we lose a species, how does it come back in there? Lots of things, right? And so just some of the data on habitat loss, and you've all seen these. We have less than 1/10 of 1% of prairie remaining, kind of untouched prairie remaining in Illinois. 90% of our over 8 million wetlands have been lost, and over 9 million acres of forest have been converted to other land uses. So we have lost a lot of these natural systems in the state, unfortunately. Here in Illinois, in Southern Illinois, we've seen some big changes. This is from the 30s, and our landscape looked quite a bit different. This is kind of just post the Great Cutover, if you will, and kind of in the Dust Bowl era. And I found that this slide was absolutely amazing. Look at the level of erosion coming in there. And so this was near Metropolis, kind of back in the hills. And if you've ever done any hiking in Southern Illinois, you can still see these erosion gullies, and they're all over the place if you know what you're looking for. They're not quite so stark, void of vegetation, but they certainly are on the landscape. So I encourage you when you walk around, and it's a little hard to see with this picture, but here's a huge erosion gully that I found walking around on some public land. Here's a big one right here coming down. Here's one right here. And so these scars on the landscape have been on there 80 years now, and they're still visible, right? And this from, land use changes that happened way before we were born, a long time ago. So that's just some of the habitat loss, some of the fragmentation issues. All right, and then the other one, again, this is where I'm talking about oaks, is ecosystem sustainability, right? Our ecosystems are changing, the health of them are changing over time. We have some sustainability issues, and I'm talking a lot about oak systems right now. So this is a system that is pretty closed, right? So this would be an understory of an oak ecosystem at Trail of Tears. That's just one solid patch of American beech, which is a native species. But as we know, there's a lot of differences in shade tolerance with our native species out there. And we get the very tolerant things like sugar maple and American beech, and somewhat tolerant like red maple and basswood. And those species, in this absence of the natural disturbances that we have seen over the last 10,000 years with people in Illinois, particularly fire, but all the other natural disturbances, we see that these species are changing their levels of where they're found and at what densities they're found in our ecosystems. And that's having some big implications on the native understory and the light available to the native understory. And so this is a picture from Pope County. This is a kind of a typical upland mesic oak forest. I think everybody knows this forest if you look at it, right? It's kind of pretty normal. And it's got a lot of oaks, right? Some nice, big, healthy oaks. But if you start looking elsewhere and start looking at what else is growing in there, you have this overstory of oaks. And then you've got all of these sugar maples in that mid-story. And this is that mesification that we're talking about. These systems with the oaks that being somewhat shade intolerant, needing a bit of light to recuperate or to regenerate, doesn't have a chance, right? They are getting kind of swamped with this sea of sugar maple. This is one of my favorite oak trees. It's a beautiful, huge white oak. But if you start looking, you look way up the trunk and you can see all of these little tiny oak leaves way at the top. But everything kind of under them in the understory, all of this, 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 all of that is sugar maple, right? Again, I like sugar maple. I love maple syrup. But this is kind of out of balance, particularly in these oak systems, which we know have or should have kind of a diverse mix understory of native plants in them, right? We're just not seeing that. We're seeing poison ivy and ticks, and that's about it. And there's some neat data kind of showing kind of what's happening. So this is in Illinois. This is from the FIA Forest Inventory and Analysis, which is a long data set that's been collected by the Forest Service. And this is average annual growth in board feet, and then average annual mortality and removals. So removals will be they're harvesting the trees or the trees are dying through mortality. And so if you can kind of do the math, the first one is white oak. You can see it's underwater. Almost 1 million board feet a year we're losing of white oak. Red oak and black oak are even worse, right? They're way underwater. So we're not growing nearly as much of these oaks as we're losing, particularly with the red oaks to mortality. Red oaks, as you all know, are shorter lived species. Their lifespan often, though the some can grow old, their lifespan's often in that 80 to 140 years old. And we're coming up on that kind of after that great cutover. So we are losing lots of our reds and black oaks to mortality and then not replacing them, basically. But then if you look at other species, black walnut, I love black walnut, but my goodness, we are growing a lot of black walnut. We are growing a lot of hackberry and growing a lot of sugar maple. Those are very much in the positives, where the oaks are very much in the negatives. Right? So again, that's what I'm talking about sustainability, is that this system, even though we have oaks are still the most abundant trees in Illinois by volume, the three of the top four most volumetric trees, so a big tree is worth more than a little tree, are oaks. Even though that's still the case, we still have lots of oaks in our overstory. If you look at the understory, and so these are seedlings in oak hickory forest. So just oak hickory forest, just forests that have oak in the overstory, tree seedlings, they're way down the list. There's way more hop, hornbeam, cherry, sugar maple, elm, even ash and hackberry than we have oaks, right? And so this is my oak tirade because I am a forester, and so I figured I get to talk about what I want. So I'm going to talk about trees, right? And so we have these trends in Illinois, right? Large numbers of mature oak dominate the overstory, little oak regeneration in the understory. And as they senesce, the canopy gaps that are created as these oaks die or cut will most likely be filled by maples and elms, right? So in general, our forests are too dark, too crowded, and not disturbed enough to support the long-term sustainability of oaks. And I would add the long-term sustainability of our understory forested ecosystems. And I love these pictures because it highlights that. So this is at a forest, this is at Trail Tier State Forest. You look back in the forest and you see a lot of leaves, right? And not a lot of plants. A lot of leaves and not a lot of plants. But you look at the edge of the road where there's actually still some light. Look at what we have, this sea of native plants. Just amazing. There's Culver's roots and sunflowers, all these things growing right where there's light. I mean, they want to be there. It's just there's not enough light in our forest. So they're kind of restricted to these linear habitats where they actually have a little bit of light. I think that's pretty interesting. It's kind of telling to me. And since I got to talk about something other than forest, so here are hill prairies, and I love Suzanne's talk on the gravel prairies, and mentioning hill prairies and your management thing. That was fantastic. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but it's really going to be kind of hopefully tie into what you said. This is for 37 aerial imagery. You can see here it's already starting to close in, but you can start to still see this open nature, right? We have these open hill prairies there. If you look at those same sites in a 2020 photo, and let's put the things on there. What is that? It's all Eastern red cedar, right? So the same thing's happening. The kind of lack of management, a closing in of these ecosystems that needed disturbance to maintain them. We've seen this over the last about 100 years. We're losing some of these systems. And so that's where the sustainability problem comes in. I think so. All right. All the bad stuff is done. Let's talk about the good stuff. I think this is more interesting. Maybe less, they're all important. But the good stuff is we still have an amazing diversity of plants in Illinois. And I was absolutely blown away when I moved up here just to realize how much we have. Every color of the rainbow, we have plants in our native ecosystems. It's really, truly a special place out there. I made that slide like 10 years ago, and I use it in every talk because it took me so long to figure out how to do that. You know, we have over 2,400, some people say over 2,500 plant species native to Illinois, 183 trees and woody shrubs. I'm talking about oaks again, 21 oak species, 193 sedges, and I can identify like two of them. Just an amazing diversity and a lot of really cool plants out there, right? There's some amazing stuff. Buffalo clover out there, climbing milk vine, spring ladies tresses showing up in my pasture at my house. So kind of weird, but I thought it was pretty cool. And it was neat that my kid dug it, right? And, you know, we've all talked about this a bunch today, but we know that we are kind of at the crossroads of these different ecosystems out there, these huge more regions. And so we have this kind of influence and a lot of our diversity here, at least in Southern Illinois, which is what I'm going to talk about because that's where I'm at, is this edge of a range effect, right? We are at the edge of a lot of species ranges. These are, I guess I'm talking about oaks a lot. I'm sorry. These are as an example of oaks, and all of these oak species are native to Illinois, but they're kind of barely native to Illinois, right? We're kind of at the edge of their range. And it's not just oaks, right? We're at the edge of tamarack or larch. This is my token plant to Northern Illinois. Shortleaf pine, cucumber tree out there, Carolina silverbell, water locust, which I think is a cool plant that people don't recognize that's different than honey locust, right? It's our aquatic water locust. And the big difference, not to get into too much detail, yeah, single-seeded seed pods versus the long seed pods with all the other ones. Gumbully, I just like saying that name. Devil's walking stick, I really like saying that name, right? Farkleberry, which I really like saying that name too. There's so many cool names that I just put them. I chose them purely for their names, but they are actually at the edge of these species ranges. So I think a lot of our diversity comes from this mixing of larger ecosystems that kind of coalesce in Illinois, which I think is really special. So that's a little bit about plants. I think really one of the best things out there is our history and our leading the nation in these preservation efforts. And Nick mentioned that I was really fortunate enough to get on the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission. So I'm one of the commissioners now, and I've been on it about a year and a half. And it really is an honor to kind of be at that level and talk about and make decisions on preserving natural systems in Illinois. And it really is an honor. And so that, you know, really our system, our Nature Preserves Commission system, our protection system, has been copied by many other states because it is one of the best. It's, you know, protecting this land in perpetuity that goes with the land, with the deed. So there's some neat stuff there. So I'm just going to kind of toot the Nature Preserves Commission horn a little bit. In Illinois, there's 424 dedicated nature preserves that protect 65,000 acres of our highest quality native ecosystems. There's 216 additional land and water reserves for another 60,000 acres. So the Nature Preserves Commission protects, manages 640 sites of over 125,000 acres in Illinois. That's really good. That's amazing what they do there. And there's some really cool sites, right? We've already seen a couple pictures of Cave Creek Glade out there, but there's others. There's sand prairies, right? This is Cyril's Park Prairie Nature Preserve. Bottomland Forest, Bell Woods, everybody knows Bell Woods and some of the awesome trees. Floodplain forest, right? So this is Fern Rocks and and at Giant City. I put this one in here because earlier I had the stilt grass with the Nature Preserve sign, and that's kind of embarrassing. So now I have a Nature Preserve sign with beautiful blue-eyed Mary there. Hill prairies, right? Pure Marquette. Tallgrass prairie out there as well. All kinds of neat stuff. And so there's so many of these ecosystems that we value as native plant enthusiasts are there and are in good shape and are being protected and being managed because of the good work from folks like the Nature Preserves Commission. I don't want to stop with them. There's the natural area system with the Shawnee National Forest. There's county level systems. There's lots of stuff going on. People are protecting these sites, and I think that's great. Other things kind of protection wise, I got to throw this in here since we did talk about invasives. We've moved and we've added new invasive species to our regulated list. I think that's a good protection movement that we've seen this past year. That's only continuing with our Illinois Invasive Plant Species Council. I think that's a really good movement and something that's past due, but we're making movements on it. The best of all is cattle repair was added to the list. I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, you can talk about that. I think it's a good thing. All right. Other good things, management. We're seeing management, and Suzanne talked about it with gravel prairies, and that's awesome. But we're seeing it throughout the landscape. We do management out there, right? Highlighting fire a little bit right here, but we're seeing groups like landowners helping landowners burn, right? So this is not only on our nature preserves and not only on our state or federal lands or other public lands, it's on private lands. People are managing their lands. They want to manage their lands. They want to do the good work. Groups like the Southern Illinois Prescribed Burn Association, Pheasants Forever, Wild Turkey Federation, the Nature Conservancy, all these groups are out there helping landowners manage their land. And I think that's an awesome thing, right? I think that's very, very good. The Illinois Prescribed Fire Council has data. It's about 53,000 acres annually in Illinois burns, prescribed fire. That's a big number, right? They still say that we need about 200,000 to burn to kind of meet our restoration goals. But still, 50,000, 53,000 acres burned annually over the last 4 or 5 years is pretty impressive. Add to that other forest management issues, other management like where the Let the Sun Shine In initiative out there. We see people looking at addressing mesification through thinning, burning, invasive species control, lots of stuff out there. And we're seeing sites like this, right? I like this picture. Look at all of that regeneration in this site. It's a rarity, but it's nice when you stumble across one of those while you're mushroom hunting. But even outside of oaks, we're seeing managed forest, right? We're seeing forests with diverse understories, forests that are that way because of the management decisions on those that manage those, right? We have some really nice areas that are diverse and in really good health because of this management. I want to do this in here just to do a quick little story. This is buffalo clover. I'm sure a lot of you know buffalo clover. I was mushroom hunting again. I do a lot of stuff mushroom hunting. I was mushroom hunting and stumbled across this population of buffalo clover. It was not new, but it was not known for a long time. And I was like, well, daggone, that's buffalo clover. And there was some plants in there, but not a lot. And it was on public land. And so we were able to then kind of identify it, map the population, and then the next year or the year after, started managing it with prescribed fire. And the response was absolutely amazing. Once that site started getting managed, buffalo clover just ran through the whole thing. It was not just here and there, it was like carpeting the area. And it was really neat to see a native plant respond to management, especially a rare native plant. The same thing happened with ovate leaf campion, Silene ovata, another state listed plant. This is in a nature preserve, and it had a remnant population that was kind of struggling. And then now it's hard to count all of them. There's so many of them with the management that's happened in this site. All right, the kind of last good is the people, right? I really, really have appreciated the enthusiasm, particularly from volunteers. And I'm not underselling the people that get paid to do it, but the people that don't get paid to do it, it's even more impressive, right? And so the people really care about the native plants and want to do things. This was a volunteer mapping thing we did in the wilderness area down Burden Falls Wilderness. And so we had a bunch of folks. There's Nick hiding over there. And we went out in the winter. Believe it or not, we mapped invasive species in the winter. Snow was on, and it was an absolute blast of a day. And these folks basically volunteered their whole day to walk around in the wilderness in the cold, looking at dead stilt grass and mapping it on their phones, right? It was very fun. It was very useful, and it was very productive in terms of identifying what we needed to do to respond to them. The other cool thing was, if Nick remembers this, we found a cool native plant there, right? Like the only second known population of big leaf snowbell bush in the whole state.
Yeah,
We found it.
Oleus.
Yep. And it was kind of fun because it was the winter, there was no leaves, and we're all like, what the heck is this thing?
But you had an eye for it. I think this has a double bud.
Yeah, I'll take credit for that. Yeah, so it was a fun day, right? And so we see that. We see people wanting to go out and learn more about these ecosystems, care about the ecosystems, understand the challenges and what needs to happen, and then advocate for them, which is super important. People are wanting to learn how to do it on their own. So this was a bit of a neat program that I've been involved in, the Beginning Forest Landowner Program, where people are coming in and taking a year-long course with us to learn how to manage their land in an effective way. And so it's really awesome to see people want to do that kind of stuff. And then just people volunteering, right? Just getting out there, burning somebody else's land, helping them. Some of these people don't have land themselves. They're not doing it to try to get the reciprocal burns. They just want to do their part. I think that's awesome. Or just learning, just wanting to understand more. So this was a COVID era thing. So in COVID, I was the state, I was the chapter president for Native Plant Society. And, we couldn't do anything but Zoom meetings when COVID first started. And we got kind of sick of that. And so we did our very first thing was a kayak botany tour, our very first in-person meeting after COVID. And it kind of hit. So I've been doing multiple ones now, but we float around, I get out, I get wet, I look at plants, and it's a lot of fun. It's really a way to kind of kayak on the job, which is not something I get to do that much, but it's useful and it's fun. But people want to learn, right? And then there's so much people want to just advocate. October, right, is something. There's all kinds of awareness months and things going on, which I think is awesome. All right. So just kind of in summary, I wanted to go through fast and kind of cut out some of my long rambling stories. But there are serious threats, right? There's all this ugly stuff happening. There's serious threats to our native plants. There's serious threats to our natural areas. There's issues with sustainability. There's issues with quality out there for sure. But in the good, there's a lot of good going on. There's things happening. We still have high quality, diverse ecosystems. We have people out there wanting to do work. And I think it's overall, I'm very hopeful and positive in terms of kind of what's going on nowadays with our native plants.